So hi and welcome to Pseudocode Programming. In this video, we'll be talking more about the Pseudocode Programming practice, sometimes known as PPP. We will review our code and its architecture. I'll talk about using to-do as a comment prefix. I'll introduce you briefly to Visual Studio's task list, which is available here in View and Task List, and how that works. And then we'll be just generally planning our next wave of coding. So let's dive in and see it work. Okay, so let's put the power of pseudocode in our hands and start making even more progress on our game. So I'm going to start at the top of main. In fact, I'm going to move main to my left-handmost tab just because logically it kind of comes first. If it'll move to my left-handmost tab. If it won't, I'll move something else in front of it. There you go. So I'm going main, then the header, then the main class definition. So let's go for it. Let's take a look down our code. We have in the main loop here, play intro, play game, and then ask to play again. What we know that we may want to do in the future is to add a game summary at the end, because it's not going to be part of the actual playing of the game, I don't think. Let's take a look down to the play game method or function. It could go here. Arguably, you could say summarize game here, or we could have summarize game here. I think it goes with the play game, so I'm going to leave it down here with play game. So I'm going to introduce you to a new prefix, which is to-do. And we've used this before, but a little bit more formally now. To-do is fairly widely accepted by integrated development environments as a code for I need to do something here. So once you've written to-do, in Visual Studio, you can go to View, and then you can go to Task List here, View and Task List. And your IDE, if you're using a different one, may have a similar feature. And what it'll do is it'll show you where all your to-do comments are. These are still just comments, but this can help you to organize what you're doing. There are some other settings on this to do with priorities. If you go to Options and then Task View or Task List in here, you can find some other things to do with setting priorities and adding other tokens. But for now, all I want you to know is that to-do is a good way of saying, I plan to do this in future. It must be done, but I can't do it right now. So summarize the game after the game is finished. That's something we need to do. And I've decided to put it inside play game because it makes more logical sense. So what else do we need to do? Let's look down. Printing the intro is fine, apart from, oh, world length. Look at that. It should be word length, of course. So let's use the refactor tool to fix it to word length. That's good. Okay, inside play game, what are we doing? So we're looping for the number of turns, but notice that we are assuming that every time we get a guess, the guess is valid. Shortly, we're going to have to start doing input validation and error checking to make sure that only valid guesses are entered. And at that point, we're actually not going to know how many times we need to go around this play game loop, because if they enter an invalid guess, then we're going to have to go around it again. So what I want to do shortly is to do make check for valid guesses. Make loop checking valid, basically, something like that. So get guess is going to become get valid guess later or something, and that's going to keep persisting until it gets a valid guess out of the system. And then what it's going to do is it's going to submit guess, valid guess, to the game. Okay? And then when we submit the valid guess to the game, it's at that point that it'll return the number of bulls and cows. So after that, we're going to print number of bulls and cows. So use English here when you're using pseudocode programming. I'm going to try and be standard here and just use lowercase. So what we're going to be doing in future is using a while loop, because there's going to be a couple of conditions on which we want to come out of the game. One is that we have expired the number of max tries, but it's not up to this for loop to count that. It's going to be up to the game object to count that, and we will be reading from it get current try and making that control this loop. So it goes from a known for loop to a slightly less known while loop. We'll be doing that later, so that's why I've said to change it from for to while loop once we are validating tries or something like that. Now, when am I using to do versus when am I using not to do? I'm not putting to do in when I'm adding new code or when the comment's going to stay. So this comment will stay even when I do this to do, and these two comments will stay even once I've added the code below them. But this stuff that's actually changing existing code, then I'll use that as a to do, because the to do itself will be deleted. Okay, so hopefully it's clear when you use to do and when you don't. like here as well. This is going to change. This get guess is going to change. So I tend to use a to-do for something that's going to change. All right, so let's keep going and thinking about the architecture. One of the things we're going to need to be able to do in the game itself is to return the number of bulls and cows. So let's put something in here. We're going to have some new type that we'll do in the next video, and then we're going to submit valid guess, and then we're going to send in a string. But I'm not going to say what we send in detail. When you write comments, you want to try and avoid actually coding in those comments. So this is too like coding. So I'm going to get rid of that comment and write more in English. You have the luxury here of working at a higher level of abstraction. So why would you try and get bogged down in the details of code at this point? What we're trying to say we do is we need to provide a method for counting bulls and cows and incrementing or increasing turn number. Oh, that was my start button. Okay, so it's this new method that we'll put in shortly that will provide a way of counting bulls and cows. It's going to return a single entity, probably, that contains both bulls and cows. We're going to use something called a struct, which is just like a class, really, as you'll see. And it will increase the turn number. If you've been wondering where the turn number is going to be increased, it's going to be inside the method that's going to be called something like submit valid guess. It'll spit back numbers of bulls and cows, possibly an error code, and then once a valid guess comes in, we'll increase the turn number. Then over in the game loop here, inside, where are we? Inside play game, let me just zoom out my font a tiny bit. Yeah, inside here, inside play game, we won't be using this count here to go in this loop. As I said, it's become a while loop. Okay, so if we look at the interface to the bull cow game, we're going to be doing things like, initially we get the maximum tries, then we keep getting current tries, checking guess validity, submitting a guess using a new method we're going to write shortly, which will increment the turn number, or should I say try number, because the try, let's try and be consistent between guess and try and turn. So in fact, when I say let's be consistent between guess and try and turn, as this is a cleanup video, let's do that. Let's do a find and see where we use guess. Check guess validity. So the guess is the actual string. Let's look across the entire project, remember the bull cow game project, for the word guess. Submit valid guess. I want to make sure that the guess is always referring to the string that the user sends in. Get guess, enter your guess. Oh, I think I missed one. Can you guess? I think that's okay. Good. All right, now let's try the word turn, because I've been using the word turn as well. And it needs to be a whole word. So to search for a whole word, you can use this thing here, match whole word. I don't use the word turn anywhere in the project. Good. So then I use the word try, which is the number of times that the user has guessed, or the guess number is the try, and that's good. So when you hear yourself saying, oh, we should really be consistent with that, do that sort of thing. Do a find and replace and get everything tidied up and tightened up. We want to be doing this type of refactoring and tightening up very frequently. So my challenge to you now, and there won't be a solution because I've basically done it for myself, is I want you to go through your code and make sure it makes sense to you firstly. I want you to action any existing to-dos that you can action, write any new to-dos for tasks that must be done in the future, do not use code in your comments, and give yourself the gift of working at this higher level of abstraction. Start writing English statements about what you want it to do in future. Then we'll come behind and we'll start coding from that. So go ahead. Stop the video now because I'm not going to come back until the next video, and I'll see you in the next lecture when we'll talk about using structures for returning these bulls and cows in one go.